Today, we are here to talk about Edward Thorndike. Edward Thorndike was born on August 31st, 1874, in Williamsburg, Massachusetts, to parents Edward Robert Thorndike and Abby Brewster Ladd. He had three siblings: Ashley, his older brother, Lynn, his younger brother, and Mildred, his little sister. Edward excelled early on in his academic endeavors. He was considered a gifted child and earned scholarships and prizes just like his older brother Ashley. Because his older brother also excelled in his studies, Edward had expectations put on him to perform, but thanks to his ability to focus and his interests to such a degree, Edward had no problems excelling in his professional career. As a child, Edward's family moved a lot, 8 times total. So he dealt with similar troubles to that of a military brat. Finding and keeping friends was hard, but besides that, he continued to perform very well. He did exceptionally well after his transfer from Lowell High School to Roxbury Latin School, but he wouldn't go on to graduate until he again transferred to a strict classical high school in Providence, Rhode Island, where he would have to take an additional year due to different credit requirements in different schools, and finally graduating from Wesleyan University in 1895. He then went on to study with William James at Harvard, focusing on and studying animal behavior from 1895 to 1897. After which he would work with James McKean Cattell at Columbia University, where he would go on to finish his doctorate in 1898. Columbia would become the place where Thorndike would spend the majority of his career, but not before spending his first year in the Women's College of Western Reserve University. Thorndike didn't begin at Columbia until 1899, but he would stay and eventually retire in 1940. His career's main focus was on teaching and learning. More importantly, the learning process and the best method for testing intelligence. In 1900, Thorndike settled down and married Elizabeth Moulton, who he would later have 4 children by. As a child, Thorndike had parents with extremely strict and religious ideals, which might have been the reasoning for him avoiding religion later in life while he pursued his personal interests in inductivism or laws or ways of living that are brought about from data. At first, Thorndike wished to study children and research how they learn, but due to the fact that there were no young subjects to study, he turned to animals. He would go on to publish his dissertation, Animal Intelligence, an experimental study of the associative processes in animals, in 1911. And in 1912, he would serve as president of the American Psychological Association and later as the president of the Psychometric Society after the first president, Louis Leon Thurstone, stopped, stepped down in 1937. Thorndike's family was very successful academically. Eventually, all three Thorndike brothers taught at Columbia University, and all four of Edward's children earned doctorate degrees themselves. Elizabeth had hers in mathematics, Edward and Alan's were in physics, and Robert's in psychology. Thorndike never suffered from poor motivation, and as a matter of fact, would avoid wasting time on work he considered useless, aka would be hyper-focused on his own work he considered useless. Oh, wait, no. AKA he would be hyper-focused on his own vast interests. His interests were so broad which that and a very active mind he inherited from his father. His work was more of an escape than escaping from working. During his career at Columbia, Thorndike produced many writings and worked to develop new concepts like his law of effect, behavior followed by reward is more likely to be repeated in the future, the law of readiness, students learn most effectively when they are excited and ready to learn, and the law of exercise. The more times something is practiced, the better retained it is. Thorndike studied the learning process by experimenting with boxes designed with puzzles or mazes animals could solve. The way in which the learner responds to stimulus determines if they will succeed with the task. Engaged learners who can stay on task have the best chance of excelling. Thorndike also realized how important response is to the learning process. Reward and punishment differ in their effectiveness of teaching. Learners better respond to reward for doing what is asked of them versus being punished when they mess up. Not only this was discovered, but also that punishment would lead to more unwanted behaviors or negative actions. Learners rewarded for being right keeps them in a positive mood, which further increases chances of retaining info. There was also Thorndike's three different kinds of intelligence: abstract, which involves verbal and symbolic thinking; mechanical, or the ability to understand things like how guns function or understanding weather patterns and how they work; and social intelligence, our ability to deal with people of all ages in interpersonal relations. During World War One, Thorndike worked with the Army while still technically being a civilian to provide intelligence tests. After 1922, he was able to choose his new lines of work since he was being funded by large foundations, and he still chose topics related to education, which further proves how much he cared about the learning process. After his retirement, he continued his work on his own until he passed of a heart attack in his home at the age of 79.